another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, my name is Ronnie Ketch, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from current issues of the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and I would just like to add it's an honor and a privilege to read for you today. The first article is from the Tuesday, March 24th edition, titled Lewiston Porter Residents React to Reassessments. Property owners in Lewiston and Porter are opening their mailboxes to a shock this month, as new assessment notices tied to a long-awaited reassessment show steep increases for some and bring questions on what comes next. One Porter resident, Stephen Cranston, posted on Facebook how a vacant parcel he bought at 2406 Lake Road for setting up a cannabis business saw its assessment go up by $183,000, with its approximate tax liability up by $2,454. The increase is crazy, especially for land we haven't done anything to it yet. Cranston said, "The increase," he said, "makes him scared for what the town could charge when his business is open and for his new family residence on Porter Center Road." Other posts from residents said their assessments increased by more than 300%. That is where the joint reassessment process for the towns of Lewiston and Porter stands, set to wrap up this July. The two municipalities announced in February 2024 that they'd work on the process with GAR Associates, that's GAR Associates. Not everyone is seeing an increase in their property value, officials said. 2/3 of people in Porter are seeing zero change or a decrease in their tax liability, said Porter Town Assessor Lena Villela. I'll say that again. It's either Lena or Lena Villela, who worked with Lewiston Town Assessor Nicholas Fuchco on the reassessment. The process would see all properties in the towns assessed at 100% of their value. An overall amount of the property taxes they collect for the municipality's budgets would not change. But the burden of who pays more shifts to the higher assessments. This is the first time both municipalities have carried out a reassessment in more than 20 years, with both maintaining full value from 2001 to 2007 through the state-sponsored annual reassessment program. For Lewiston in 2025, the average property assessment was for 40% of its value. For Porter, the average was 44%. The new assessment values are determined by current markets and property sales over the past 3 years, officials said, with the appraisals run on all property types, resulting in land values increased to their current value. As a result, 1/3 of Lewiston and Porter residents should expect their tax liabilities to increase. Another third should expect them to go down, and the remaining third would see little to no change. Villela said the majority of Porter properties with higher tax burdens were near Lake Ontario as a result of higher home sales there over the years. Fiutko, on the other hand, said Lewiston's reassessment has been a mixed bag, with the properties with higher tax burdens located all over the town. No matter where you point on a map, you could see the 1/3 increase, 1/3 same, and 1/3 decrease in every single neighborhood, Fiutko said. For those who want to challenge their tentative assessed value, they can file a grievance with the towns between May 1st and May 26th, which Cranston said he plans on doing. The Board of Assessment Review will hold its hearing on May 26th and make determinations on any assessment changes after the hearings. Any notices for changed values will be sent out by July 1st. Tax exemption programs like STAR and those for veterans will be used at their full values as well. From what Villela has seen so far among residents contacting her, 2/3 of them have either a plus or minus sign toward the bottom, which she says is a good thing since it shows the tax levy would be distributed equally. We want to make sure residents are not paying more taxes than needed, Villela said. I had people ask me about if the minus sign is right. During a Village of Lewiston board meeting this past week, Mayor Ann Welch said that when the last townwide reassessment happened, when she was village clerk, residents were panicking about their assessments going up and costing them more money. She noted the average tax rate in the village before the reassessment was $8 per 1,000 of assessed values, and afterward it went down to $3 per 1,000. I don't think everybody's going to get killed with it, Walt said. It'll bring the low assessments like me up to meet everybody else. After this process is finished and the final tax roll is filed on July 1st, both municipalities plan to keep the assessment rate at 100% for the next 3 years. That will be applied to school taxes starting this September, town and county taxes starting January 2027, and village taxes starting July 2027. And that concludes the article titled Lewiston Porter Residents React to Reassessments. The next article is titled Digging into Niagara County's Distant Past. When I first encountered Native American artifacts in Niagara County, I had difficulty fitting them into my understanding of the area's history. Growing up in Lockport, I unknowingly hiked, camped, hunted, and fished on land that had been inhabited long before. Most of our recorded history roughly starts in the 1800s when settlers arrived. It has been a long time, but only 225 years have passed. That short compared to the time of the first native settlers. Local history is layered. Recently, through my research, I have come across numerous recognized Native American occupations and collections of arrowheads and tools in the county. As reports of finds came in from Thrall Road and Forsyth Tavern Farm in Cambria, Arrowhead Spring Vineyards in the town of Lockport, farms along Route 104, and McCollum Orchards in Lockport, I wondered, what does it mean? What does it tell us about Native American occupation in the county? How long ago was it occupied? Were there settlements? Can we imagine Niagara County as it was 500 to 1500 years ago or longer? And how do I write about the history of the indigenous people who lived in the area and were later removed through aggression and falsehoods? I have consulted local historians and experts in Native American history to determine the most effective way to present this important past. I have decided that it is crucial to acknowledge that the region, unfamiliar to settlers in the 1800s, were once the home of many Native Americans, and that this history should be recognized and understood. To begin, I contacted the Heartland Historical Society from Heartland's knowledgeable town historian, Norm LaJoy, who was well informed about several Native American sites in the greater Heartland area. Last month, before snow started falling, LaJoy and I visited the locations and reviewed his detailed records. The earliest history of Heartland includes both oral and written accounts of an ancient earthwork, as described in the 1878 History of Niagara County, New York. But on the castle farm, arrowheads and some small relics of ancient warfare were found. Fort Peace was reported to be a circular fort with walls 2 to 4 feet high and a diameter of roughly 330 feet. The fort was dismantled in 1828 to make way for land cultivation. Although it has been plowed, a hill remains, and the site remains largely untouched, leaving it open to future investigations. In his 2017 book titled Town of Heartland, Our Story, LaJoy wrote, "Excavations by the State University at Buffalo in 1961 found evidence of a late prehistoric occupation dating to approximately 1400 AD, and farmers and area children have continued to recover many spear points and arrowheads from the nearby fields." In a 1979 letter to the owner of the property that contained Fort Peace, John Aiken on Ruck Road, Dr. Bill Engelbrecht of the State University College at Buffalo outlined the site's records. He stated, "It is my impression that the site reflects a late prehistoric Iroquoian occupation dating to approximately 1400 AD. He further stated that there was evidence of an additional site on the property to the north of Fort Peace. Engelbrecht and Richard McCarthy of Lockport visited the setting in September of 1979. Engelbrecht noted that McCarthy had history with the site and previously recovered material from it. McCarthy was a noted local historian and a member of the board of the Niagara County Historical Society. Engelbrecht ended his letter to Aiken thus. I'll read that again. Engelbrecht ended his letter to Aiken thus. Sites such as the one on your property have the potential to provide valuable information relating to the prehistoric occupation of Niagara County. Close to Fort Peace, an extensive collection of arrowheads was gathered on the Wheeler Road farm. They were discovered over the years on land that has been farmed since the 1800s. And just to pause for a moment, you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Again, this is the Tuesday, March 24th edition. Now to continue with the article. This small group of sites and relics offer just a glimpse of the rich history of Native American tribes in Niagara County. Still, it can serve as an example and an entry point into a significant and often overlooked part of our past. If you reside in Niagara County, the land on which you live was likely once used by Native Americans for daily activities including hunting, fishing, and farming. If you are near water, such as a river, stream, or spring, it could have been a native settlement. Before Niagara County was established, this area and its abundant resources had supported human life for thousands of years. Thanks to Norma Joy, Niagara County Historical Society curator Terry Abrams, and the Niagara County Historian's Office for their assistance with this report. Next time, drawing on research and local lore, I will briefly examine the remnants of Native American history still present on the land. Often, only arrowheads and tools remain after thousands of years. What will they tell us? Which native groups use them? To what year are they dated? What type of stone are they made of? And where did the stone originate? What are the laws regarding collective Native American artifacts? And what should you do when you find them? Stay tuned. And that concludes the article titled Digging into Niagara County's Distant Past. The next article is titled America's Official Mammal, the Bison, Gets a Bronze Tribute. The national mammal of the United States is getting in on America's 250th birthday celebration. Three bison statues, cast in bronze, have taken up a permanent display outside the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History in Washington. The pieces, which are larger than real-life bison, made their public debut in the nation's capital on Friday. The bison earned its official status. I'll read that again. The bison earned its official status as the nation's mammal under a law signed by former President Obama in 2016. Millions of bisons once roamed the Great Plains, but were nearly driven to extinction in the 1800s. It is a wonderful story of conservation working. It's a story of people seeing a need and getting behind that to conserve an animal that is specific to North America, says Gary Staub, a paleo artist who made the statues. Staub designed and sculpted the statues in Kearney, Missouri, where he works full-time to create sculptures of animals and historical artifacts for museums around the world. For the bison, Staub sculpted the fully sized statues in foam and clay before they were cast in bronze and assembled at a foundry in Colorado. The three statues depict a bull, a cow, and a calf. He said it took about 4 months to complete the sculptures, a time frame he called lightning fast, given the size of the pieces. They really represent a really unbelievably beautiful and unique thing about North America, Staub said. And that concludes the article titled America's Official Mammal, the Bison Gets a Bronze Tribute. The next article is titled Founders and Guardians, Frederick Douglass. Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey was born in Talbot County, Maryland, in the late winter of 1818. Born into slavery, Frederick never knew his father. He had little contact with his mother due to the practice of separating members of enslaved families. She died when Frederick was a young child. As a child, Frederick Bailey was sent to Baltimore by his enslaver to work for the Auld family. Even though it was illegal for her to do so, Mrs. Auld taught Frederick the alphabet, initiating his quest for learning and his respect for education. In his teen years, he experienced and fought back against the brutal harshness and injustices of slavery. In 1838, he escaped bondage and made his way from Maryland to Massachusetts. There he married Anna Murray, who he had met in Baltimore. Together, they had 5 children. The couple adopted the name Douglas to avoid having his former enslavers find him. In 1841, he met William Lloyd Garrison, an abolitionist, who published The Liberator, a noted newspaper that was the voice of the abolitionist movement. At Garrison's urging, Douglass began to share his story. He published his first autobiography titled Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave in 1845. He became a respected and eloquent voice for the abolitionist movement. Because of concerns that his former enslaver might find him, Douglass left Massachusetts and sailed for England that same year. During the 2 years he was there, he developed several friendships among those who admired him and the work he was doing. Together, they bought Douglass his freedom. Upon returning to the United States in 1847, Douglas, then a free person, relocated with his family to Rochester, New York. There he began publishing the North Star, his own abolitionist newspaper, actively supported the Underground Railroad, and began drawing attention to racial segregation in the free states. He was also working in the growing movement for gender equality. His second autobiography, My Bondage and My Freedom, was published in 1855. When the Civil War began in 1861, Douglas called for the formation of African American regiments. Two of his sons fought with the Massachusetts Infantry Regiment. He lobbied and urged Lincoln to establish emancipation as a central mission of the government's war policy. In large measure, his committed efforts and his strong voice helped bring about the passage of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution ending slavery. As a strong proponent of social justice and human equality, Douglas knew that emancipation was not an end, but was instead a new beginning. He turned his focus to equal rights, equal opportunity, and equal protection under the law for all. He became a major force in the ratification of the 14th and 15th Amendments to the Constitution in 1868 and 1870, respectively. Those amendments expanded the embrace of citizenship, addressed the rights and protections that come with it, and forbid denying the right to vote based on race or color. Douglas had long believed that without equality, emancipation would be hollow. Douglas and his family moved to Washington in 1872. At that time, he held several positions of public trust and influence. He was on the board of Howard University, was the president of the Freedmen's Bank, and was a member of the Council of the District of Columbia. He served as a U.S. Marshal and Recorder of Deeds for the District of Columbia, and he became a minister to Haiti. During this period in his life, Douglas continued writing and speaking for gender and racial equality. His third autobiography, titled The Life and Times of Frederick Douglass, was published in 1881, highlighted both the progress that had been made in the civil rights movement and the work that remained. Anna Douglass passed away in 1882 after suffering a stroke. 2 years later, Frederick married again. He married Helen Pitts, who was active in the suffragists movement. For a time, the couple traveled to Africa and parts of Europe. For a time, they lived in Haiti, while Douglas served as a minister to that country. Shortly before her death in 1903, she set in motion the preservation of their estate, Cedar Hill, which later became the Frederick Douglass National Historical Site. Frederick Douglass, father of the Civil Rights Movement in the United States, died on February 20th of 1895 at the age of 77. Earlier in the day, he had attended a meeting of the National Council of Women in Washington. At that meeting, he was recognized for his tireless and committed work in support of women's rights. Shortly after returning home, he passed away, the result of an apparent heart attack. And just to pause for a moment, you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the March 24th, 2026 edition of the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Now to continue with the article. Frederick Douglass understood the relationship between struggle and progress as he described it. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and to deprecate agitation are men, people who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. Douglass championed the struggle that brought about significant progress in racial equality. His lived experience, from enslavement to enduring guardian of the American dream, is an honest, truthful, and virtuous example of the lasting contributions that can be made by engaged and committed individuals. Frederick Douglass broadened the reach and meaning of freedom, and in doing so, he expanded the opportunities and protections that come with it. And that concludes the article titled Founders and Guardians, Frederick Douglass. The next article is titled A High-Rise Factory with No Way Out. 600 employees, one fire, not enough exits. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory occupied the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors atop the H building on the corner of Green Street and Washington Place, just off Washington Square in Manhattan's Greenwich Village. The owners of the factory employed up to 1,000 workers during the busy seasons, assembling women's blouses known as shirt waists. They were paid between $7 and $12 a week for their shifts, 9 hours a day on weekdays, plus 7 hours on Saturdays. Most of the seamstresses were Italian and Jewish women and girls, recent immigrants, and most of whom could speak little English. There was a purpose to the factory's hiring practices. It was thought that young women with little English skills were less likely to organize a labor union. At 4:40 p.m. on Saturday, March 25, 1911, about 600 women were working hard to finish their work week when a fire began in a scrap heap beneath one of the cutting tables at the northeast corner of the 8th floor. The scrap bins weren't emptied very often. Each held up to 2 months of discarded material, and smoking wasn't permitted in the factory, but workers sometimes hid cigarettes at their workstations. It's thought that someone carelessly tossed a cigarette or a match into the heap. The fire grew quickly. A passerby on the street below spotted the smoke and sounded a fire alarm. A supervisor on the 8th floor warned employees on the 8th and 10th floors, but she had no way of sounding an alarm on the busy 9th floor. Employees raced to the exits, 2 stairwells, 4 small freight elevators, and a fire escape. One of the stairwells was blocked right away by the fire. The doors to the other, managers had always kept locked to prevent theft and to keep out union organizers. Employees packed into the elevators, which could carry only 12 people at a time. Others ran to the fire escape, which was poorly constructed and couldn't hold the weight of a large number of people. It began to twist and pull from the side of the building, dropping about 20 employees 100 feet to the pavement. Rose Rosenfeld, who had just turned 18, had noticed the company's owners were visiting with their families that day. When the alarm spread, she noticed that they had scurried to the roof. She and several others followed and were eventually rescued from firemen atop of a nearby building. Firefighters showed up and began to crank up the rescue ladders, which, they found, extended no further than the 8th floor. The elevator stopped working, and the flames spread, blocking the one open stairwell, with a wall of flame spreading their way. Many workers chose to jump. Up to 62 people leapt to their deaths from windows that afternoon. Of the 146 people who died that day, 123 were women and girls. The oldest was 43 years old. The youngest were 2 14-year-olds. The owners of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory had both survived via the roof. They were brought up on charges of second-degree manslaughter. At their trial the next winter, the defense admitted exit doors had been locked, but pointed out the prosecution failed to prove the owners knew that. They were both acquitted. Victims' families then filed a civil suit in which the owners were found liable for wrongful death. The families were awarded $75 for each victim. The owners, on the other hand, were compensated nearly $65,000 from their insurance company for the loss of their factory. Newspapers reported that the two had 4 previous suspicious fire claims, but officials didn't suspect arson in the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. The building is still there. It's now called the Brown Building and is part of the campus of New York University. And that concludes the article titled "A High-Rise Factory with No Way Out." The next article is titled New State Law Requires Stores to Accept Cash. Again, that's new state law requires stores to accept cash. New York Attorney General Letitia James recently issued a consumer alert reminding New Yorkers that stores throughout the state must allow customers to pay in cash. Under a new law now in effect, it is illegal for a New York food store or retail establishment to refuse payment in cash for goods or services. The new statewide law mirrors a similar New York City law that has been in effect since 2020. James encourages all New Yorkers to submit a complaint to the Office of the Attorney General if they believe a store is violating the law. New Yorkers have a right to service, no matter how they choose to pay, James said in a press release. Businesses cannot deny New Yorkers access to necessities like food and clothing by refusing to take cash or charging shoppers more for paying in cash. I will not hesitate to enforce this law to protect consumers across our state. Under the law, food stores and other retail establishments cannot require consumers to pay by credit card or use other cashless transaction methods to complete their purchase. They also cannot charge consumers a higher price if they pay in cash. Stores that violate the new law will face maximum civil penalties of $1,000 for the first violation and $1,500 for each succeeding violation. The new law has few exceptions. Stores don't have to accept bills in denominations above $20. Stores don't have to accept cash for orders made by telephone, mail, or internet unless that transaction takes place at the store. The new law also doesn't apply if a store provides a device on its premises to convert cash into a prepaid card. However, the store cannot charge a fee or require the prepaid card be loaded with a minimum amount of $1. New Yorkers who believe a store is violating the new law should call the Office of the Attorney General at 1-800-771-7755. That's 1-800-771-7755. And that concludes the article titled, New State Law Requires Stores to Accept Cash. The next article is titled, Tops Celebrates its 50th Store Remodel in Tonawanda. Tops Friendly Markets recently completed a $2.3 million remodel of its store at 890 Yonge Street in Tonawanda, marketing the company's 50th major store remodel in 6 years. The project is part of Top's capital improvement project, which has included more than $100 million invested across its 3-state imprint. Tops will celebrate the grand reopening with a ceremonial ribbon cutting on March 4th, welcoming customers, community members, and local officials to tour the renovated store. So that last paragraph I just read, for this edition of the newspaper, it's March 24th, and they're saying that the ribbon cutting is on March 4th. I don't know if that's a misprint. It may have meant May 4th. I'm not sure. I just wanted to clarify that. To continue with the article, this remodel reflects our continued commitment to our customers and the communities we serve, said Ron Ferry, president of Tops Friendly Markets. By reinvesting in Tonawanda, we're delivering a more modern, convenient shopping experience while continuing to offer great value. The 52,000 square foot store features refreshed interior and exterior decor, upgraded lighting, enhanced self-checkouts, renovated restrooms, expanded digital signage, and upgraded customer amenities. Fresh and specialty departments have been expanded, including Boar's Head premium deli meats, a larger cheese shop, a live lobster tank, and an enhanced gluten-free selection featuring products from local Vinchet's Bakery. The store also offers expanded prepared foods, fresh sushi, rotisserie chicken, and made-to-order meals. Customers will also find convenient services including Instacart pickup and delivery, DoorDash delivery, order ahead meals and catering, the Flash Food app, and a full-service pharmacy. The grand reopening celebration will continue throughout March with special promotions and in-store events. And that concludes the article titled Top Celebrates Its 50th Store Remodel in Tonawanda. Just to pause for a moment, you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Gazette. And this particular issue is the Saturday-Sunday, March 21st, 22nd edition on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. This article is titled, As the Ice Melts, Spring Takes Flight in the Swamps. Things are looking up with the arrival of spring. Red-winged blackbirds are showing up and starting to sing for the girls as they set up their territories. I'm seeing a good number of ring-necked ducks that always show up as the ice is disappearing in the marshes. Accompanying them are a fair number of coots and some widgeons. The northern shoveler, with its big spoon-shaped bill, is also hitting local open marshes. Canada geese are arriving in good numbers and already starting to lay claims to nesting spots. Hooded, I'm not sure how to say this, hooded mergansers are also here. And I get excited about photographing a drake when he spreads that black hood, showing off those white patches on his sides. It won't be long before his super handsome cousin, the male wood duck, arrives to show us his beautiful array of iridescent colors. I get really worked up about photographing this duck because every time he moves, new brilliant colors show up. As a matter of fact, I have a special place in the flooded part of my woods just to observe and photograph this jewel. A wildlife loss has shown up in the Alabama swamps with the spring thaw. While out photographing last week, I spotted hundreds of fish floating dead along the east shores of Ringneck Marsh on the Iroquois National Wildlife Refuge. As more of the ice melted, more dead fish were blown onto the shore. What killed all these fish? Lack of oxygen? With the winter we had, thick ice on the marshes, along with a heavier cover of snow, prevented sunlight from reaching the aquatic plants, and thus they couldn't produce oxygen for the fish. The plants themselves began to use what little oxygen was left, reducing it even more for the fish. The fish then died because of a lack of oxygen and the increase of gases produced by the decaying plants. This process also occurs in ponds, even deep ponds. My pond at my cabin is big and deep, and it contains a lot of nice fish. My friend who uses the cabin and helps maintain it informed me last week that when he and his lady friend arrived there, they found the pond covered with all kinds of dead fish, including some prized bass, a lot of bluegill, and a 2.5-foot grass carp, all from the same type of winter kill. The winter was not only hard on us, but on the fish too. A positive thing has been occurring in the swamp recently. Tundra swans have been arriving. These birds nest in the Arctic and Canada's tundra country and winter along the east coast. When they migrate back north from mid-February to late March, they often spend a bit of time in the Alabama swamps. They showed up recently in large numbers and can be seen in the Kumpf Marsh. There is currently no sign marking this marsh on the Iroquois Refuge along Route 77. This marsh attracts them every year in early spring, to the tune of 500 to 800 birds. The best times to see them are early morning and the last hour of the day, as they travel out to the surrounding farmland to feed during the day. They are a real sight to see as they rest on the Swallow Marsh, and even more so as they come sailing out of the sky with wings cupped to land among the other resting swans. The tundra swan is a pure white swan with usually a smudge of yellow at the base of its bill. It weighs between 14 and 16 pounds and has a wingspan between 5.5 and 7 feet. There are also a few trumpeter swans in the area that look similar, but they are bigger, 20 to 30 pounds, and a wingspan between 7 and 8 feet. Also, their bills are more wedge-shaped and lack that yellow patch at the base. The tundra swans won't be here much longer, so get out and see them. It's a sight you will never forget. There are some reports of snow geese up along Lake Ontario, but I haven't seen any flocks in the swamp area yet. Snow goose is another white bird that travels in masses and is worth the effort to witness in the great outdoors. And that concludes the article titled, "As the Ice Melts, Spring Takes Flight in the Swamps." The next article is titled, "Historical Association of Lewiston, Historical Association of Lewiston Talk Empire State Express Train." And again, this goes back to the March 24th edition of the Niagara Gazette. The Historical Association of Lewiston will host Richard Waite for its March program. She went like the wind. Engine 999 set a world record. The breaking of the 100-mile-per-hour speed barrier by a man-made vehicle was accomplished by steam locomotive 999 between Batavia and Buffalo, piloted by Buffalo's Charlie Hogan in 1893. Waite will Waite will talk on how the Empire State Express was able to reach 100 miles per hour and what happened when Hogan after the historical ride. Waite is a graduate of Alfred Tech, where he studied industrial chemistry in both Canisius College and the University of Buffalo, where he studied European intellectual history and historiography. After retiring from Williamsville North High School, where he taught history, psychology, and sociology, Waite wrote a series of articles for the Western New York Heritage magazine, which highlights several intriguing events, institutions, and personalities encountered in our Western New York past. This community event is free and open to all, but donations are generally appreciated to help support the museum. Refreshments will be served at the presentation, which takes place at 7 p.m. Thursday at the Lutheran Church of the Messiah Fellowship Hall, 915 Oneida Street in Lewiston. That's 7 p.m. Thursday at the Lutheran Church of the Messiah Fellowship Hall, 1915 Oneida Street in Lewiston. And that concludes the article titled Historical Association of Lewiston Talk Empire State Express Train. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the March 21st and 22nd and 24th edition of the Niagara Gazette. We read from the Niagara Gazette every Saturday at 11 a.m. Again, my name is Ronnie Ketch. Thank you for listening. And I apologize for any mispronunciation of words and some of my hiccups of my sentences. I got a tickle in my throat towards the end. But again, it was an honor and a privilege to read for you today. My thoughts and prayers are with all of you. And have a beautiful day. And I hope to read for you again.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have a reading of the Dunkirk Observer. Following that at 1 o'clock, we have a reading of some of our Northtown Bee papers, including Amherst, Clarence, Cheektowaga, Lancaster, and Depew. And then at 2 o'clock, we have the Southtown Bees, which includes Orchard Park, the Hamburg Sun, the East Aurora, and West Seneca papers. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Radio Reading broadcasts daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, and books to people who are blind or have a print disability and are provided reading radios. Radio Reading's broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. From broadcast studios at 1199 Harlem Road, Radio Reading continues our almost 40-year tradition of award-winning service. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability,